let's talk about lights. So a few weeks ago, Zhiyun reached out to me and they wanted me to have a look at two of their flagship lights, the M40 and the Fiberate F100. First up, we have the pocket-sized M40, and like I often say, don't worry about its size, it packs some serious power, I promise. With its 40 watts, it can comfortably light up large spaces and subjects over large distances, as you'll see later in the video. Secondly, we have the F100 light stay, with 100 watts of power, full RGB, and a host of fun features to play around with. Now, while I did get this gear for free, it's worth noting that this is not a sponsored video. Zhiyun has not given me any conditions, such as you have to be nice about our product for me to receive them. They did send them to me for free, but it's still going to be an unbiased review video. Today we're going to have a look at both of these lights. We're going to go through some practical uses of how you can use them to step up your filmmaking or photography game, and at the end I'll also share some of my thoughts using them. So first things first, let's have a look at the M40. This small but extremely powerful light comes in at just under £100, which does put it at the higher end price-wise of pocketable lights. However, I would argue that it's in a completely different league compared to other pocketable lights I've seen, just because of its sheer power. Yeah, after using it for the past few weeks, I realized why it's priced where it is. And to say it simply, it's just insanely powerful. I didn't really know what this 40 watts meant, but as soon as I turned it on, I was shocked to see how bright it actually is. Because of how stupidly powerful this light is, it actually comes in with a built-in cooling system. So it's got a fan that you can see through the little grills here, just to make sure that the light doesn't overheat when you turn it on to its full power. The motto for the M40 is simple but effective. There are only two knobs on the side, one for brightness and one for the color temperature. It's worth noting here that this light does not have RGB functionality. So while you can go to a more orangey hue if you turn the color temperature warmer, and a slightly blue hue if you turn the color temperature to cold, you're not going to be able to have access to all the colors of the rainbow. So there's no green, no purple, and so on and so on. It has a neat little stand with a 1/4-20 thread, so you can easily attach it to a camera or a tripod. There's two built-in 2600 mAh batteries, and it comes with USB-C charging, which is nice to have because most of my technology charges via USB-C, so I can still charge all of my tech and all of my equipment just using one cable. At full power and full charge, these batteries allow the M40 to give you full brightness at 100% for 29 minutes straight, which doesn't sound like that much. However, having used this over the past couple of weeks, I cannot imagine a situation where you would actually need it at 100% for that long. Like most of the time when I was doing portrait work, I kept it at about 20 or 30% brightness because this thing is bright. Okay, moving on to the F100. While it's not as pocketable as the M40, it can still be considered very compact for its powerful output. At 100 watts and over 20,000 lux at its max brightness, this thing is insanely powerful. It has a pretty intuitive turning dial with some neat shortcuts. For example, by holding up, you instantly boost the light into its maximum brightness. This light is easily the most powerful and brightest light in my arsenal of equipment. And because of how powerful it is, similar to the M40, it comes with fans on the back. And you can see there's a bunch of them. I think there's like 5 or 6 of them. Because it truly is so powerful, you need the cooling to make sure that it doesn't overheat. While the M40 only had two 2600 mAh batteries, this bad boy comes with 6. And these batteries can be charged easily via USB-C, just like the M40. Besides providing really powerful white light, the F100 also has full RGB capabilities, light modifiers, as well as built-in effects that we'll talk about shortly. Now that you have a basic overview of both of these lights, let's have a look at some practical uses that you can use them for. Number 1, you can use the M40 as a hair light. So if you use one of these clamps, you can attach it somewhere above head level. So for example, the rail of the curtain. Like the name implies, you can then shine a light onto your hair, which just helps separate the person in front of the camera from a relatively dark background. Number 2, you can use the F100 as a background color light. So by turning it to blue and hiding it behind the TV, I now have this kind of nice bluish glow in the background, which just adds a bit of color and makes the whole scene a little bit more interesting. Use case number 3, this you can do with both the F100 and the M40, is using them as a key light, aka the main light that's shining onto your face. The key light you usually put at 45 degrees from the subject, so instead of having a light directly shining at my face, it's just slightly to the left. What's really neat is the F100 actually comes with this diffuser that you can put over these gates on either side. The result is a really nice, well, diffused white light that's perfect for these talking head shots when you're using the light as a key light. Use case number 4 is using the M40 as a fill light. So at the moment, I'm only using one key light, which is 45 degrees to my left. Now, that can result in shadows forming on my face. And if you want to get rid of those shadows, you would use a slightly less powerful light on the opposite side, and I'll put a diagram on screen to help explain it. And by having both the key light and the fill light, like the name suggests, you can then fill in those shadows that result from just having the key light alone. Number 5. If you have one of these hot true to multiple cold true adapters like I'm showing here, you can actually use the M40 as an on-camera key light. You can easily attach just the light to your camera, but if you have one of these adapters, you can attach both your microphone and the M40 to your camera, which will be a really good vlogging setup if you're, for example, vlogging in the dark. Number 6 is using both of these lights for product shots. So by moving the light above your product in an arch, you can kind of create a sense of movement, even though the camera and the product itself are not moving. And it really helps show off the details of whatever product it is that you're showing off, because as you're moving the light over it, the light fills different crevices and all the nooks and crannies and kind of shows off all the detail of the product, which is a really nice and easy way to get product B-roll for your videos. Number 7 relates to the F100. So the F100 comes with a bunch of built-in kind of light presets that emulate different scenes. For example, the candlelight scene you can use for setting the mood or trying to emulate a certain situation if you're a filmmaker. Number 8 is specific to the M40. Because of its small size, you can put it anywhere you want. So you can get really creative with how you use this light to illuminate your shots. For example, if I wanted to put my camera inside of a cupboard and do this shot where I open the cupboard and it reveals my face, I can put the light next to the camera inside the cupboard so that when I open it, my face is well lit. And because of its size, the options are almost limitless. You can just put this anywhere. Back to the F100. Use case number 9 is light painting. So if you've been a fan of my channel for a while, you'll realize that I'm a big fan of light painting. It's probably one of my favorite types of photography. And because this thing has full RGB functionality, you can go crazy with the light painting. Again, the options are almost limitless. Earlier in the week, I met up with my friend Nick, and we wanted to recreate this kind of portal photo shoot idea that we saw on Kyle Nutt's YouTube channel. Essentially what we did was we put 2 plastic bags over the F100, and by waving it around like an idiot in public, we're actually able to create this kind of portal looking thing using the light. We then combined it with another shot of me standing next to the portal, and we set the F100 to the same color just to illuminate me to make it a bit more convincing. And finally merged in a third shot of whatever holiday destination that we had. And the result I'll show on screen. It's not the best light painting project, but it's really fun to experiment with this, and this is a solid piece of kit for it. Now, number 10 and the final practical use case of this series is using the M40 for portrait shoots. Now, if you're a photographer who routinely does portrait shoots, I can't stress enough how useful the M40 is going to be. So because of how powerful it is, you can have the peace of mind knowing that regardless of what location you're in and what space you're shooting in, that your subject is going to be well lit. Another benefit of its size is it just doesn't scream like, hey, look at me, I'm a professional photographer and there's a photo shoot happening right now. And especially in some locations, for example, this fancy hotel lobby that I did a photo shoot in with my friend Lucy, people may not love the fact that you're waving around a 1 meter long light stick because it can disrupt the other customers or the other guests of the venue. But an inconspicuous little pocket light like the M40 may give you a lot more leeway. And as predicted, we were able to do a full photo shoot in this hotel lobby without anyone bothering us. Okay, moving on to my final thoughts for the M40, and then I'll talk about the F100. So in terms of what I like about the M40, I think it's a really solid piece of gear. I was actually kind of skeptical at first because I already have pocket-sized lights from other brands, but none of them can even get close to the level of brightness that this thing provides. So if you're a photographer or a videographer that routinely, does run and gun shooting where you're just out and about and don't necessarily want to bring your entire studio worth of equipment with you, this is super useful. The fact it's super powerful while also being portable, and the fact that you can attach it to your camera easily, make this a really solid piece of equipment in my opinion. It's simple yet effective, and I actually just really like the design. I think this thing just looks really cool. I also think the design is quite clever, as you can easily see the brightness settings of your dials on the back of the light without being blinded by the light itself. I do have cheaper and smaller alternatives of this kind of pocket-sized light. None of them are even half as powerful as this one. Especially for portraits, when you're often using a more zoomed in focal length, you're going to be standing fairly far away from your subject, maybe 5 meters or more. In those situations, you need a powerful light to be able to hold it with one hand while holding the camera in the other, and having the light still be able to reach your subject. If I'm using a less powerful light, even dialed up to 100%, it might not be sufficient to light the subject properly. Okay, in terms of what I don't like about this lens, there's actually only one caveat, and that is the lack of RGB functionality. I suppose it makes sense, you can't have everything, and I don't know how lights work, I'm not a light manufacturer, but maybe having RGB functionality would mean that the light isn't as bright. You know, if it did have RGB functionality, this thing would actually be too powerful, because then you would be able to use it for like all of these product shots, bicolor portraits like this one, but that's okay. It does the job at lighting a subject really, really well, and if that's something you need, I would strongly recommend the M40. In conclusion, I would say if you're a videographer or you do a lot of portrait work as a photographer, this light is a must-have. It's super portable, it's super useful and very powerful, so I would definitely consider buying it. For £90, I think the price is fair. It's not super cheap, but it's also not super expensive. And if you use this for a couple of paid portrait shoots, you'll quickly earn your money back. Okay, final thoughts for the f100. Now, similar to the M40, I was truly blown away by how powerful this thing is. I can't actually think of that many instances where I would need this device at 100% brightness. Maybe if I'm doing a car shoot outdoors in like pitch black, but otherwise this thing is so powerful that I don't even know if I need all 100% of it. And I think that's not a problem. I think not knowing how you'll use the full extent or full potential of your equipment is a pretty nice problem to have. It's definitely better than not having enough potential power. I was really impressed with the product overall. You can tell it's a really premium product. I love the branding, I love the case that it comes in and all of the extra modifiers. It really is a well-rounded, well-designed product with a lot of functionality. Now, while I have been very impressed with the design, there is one design flaw that did get on my nerves a little bit, and that is the rotating dial that you use to go through all of the modes. Now, I like the shortcuts, and after a bit of getting used to them, you'll remember them and it'll become second nature. That's fine. What I don't love is the rotating dial itself, because if I want to go from say 10% to 100%, there's quite a few rotations that you have to do. And I found it quite difficult to actually operate this thing in the cold because my fingers were kind of freezing and I kept accidentally pressing one of the 4 directions, up, down, left, or right, instead of smoothly kind of turning the dial. So I ended up kind of digging my nail into it to make sure that I don't press it and I can still rotate it. So that is one design flaw that I would kind of warn you about. While it's a minor inconvenience, not a major thing, but it's still worth noting in my opinion. At about £250, the f100 is definitely more towards the expensive side, and as a result of that, I would carefully consider whether or not you truly need all of these functionalities as a photographer or a videographer. If you're just starting out, this light might be a little bit overkill, to be honest. But if you're a professional who routinely needs a reliable, powerful light for outdoor or nighttime shoots, then this thing is a solid option. Another nice thing is knowing that this is going to be the last light that you'll buy for a while. Because of all its functionality and features, you can rest assured that you can spend this $250 initially and it's going to be expensive, but you're probably not going to need another light for the next couple of years. So if you routinely earn money with professional videography or photography, for example, you'll also earn your money back relatively quickly. Okay, that wraps up everything I wanted to say about the M40 and the f100. Hopefully this was useful. Leave a comment below to let me know your thoughts on these lights. I hope you enjoyed the video as always. I'll see you next time.